Every Who down in Whoville liked Christmas a lot. But the Grinch, who lived just north of Whoville, did not. The Grinch hated Christmas, the whole Christmas season. Now, please don't ask why, no one quite knows the reason. It could be that his head wasn't screwed on quite right. It could be, perhaps, that his shoes were too tight. But I think that the most likely reason of all may have been that his heart was 2 sizes too small. But whatever the reason, his heart or his shoes, he stood there on Christmas Eve, hating the Whos. He stared down from his cave with a sour, grinchy frown at the warm, lighted windows below in their town. For he knew every Who down in Whoville beneath was busy now, hanging a mistletoe wreath. And they're hanging their stockings, he snarled with a sneer. Tomorrow is Christmas. It's practically here. Then he growled with his Grinch fingers nervously drumming, I must find a way to keep Christmas from coming. For tomorrow, he knew, all the Who girls and boys would wake up bright and early. They'd rush to their toys, and then, oh, the noise, noise, noise. That's one thing he hated. The noise, noise, noise. And then the Whos, young and old, would sit down to a feast. And they'd feast, and they'd feast, and they'd feast, feast, feast. They would start on Who pudding and the rare Who roast beast, which was something the Grinch couldn't stand in the least. And then they'd do something he liked least of all. Every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, would stand close together with Christmas bells ringing. They'd stand hand in hand, and the Whos would start singing. They'd sing, and they'd sing, and they'd sing. And the more the Grinch thought about the Who Christmas sing, the more the Grinch thought, I must stop the whole thing. Why, for 53 years, I've put up with it now. I must stop Christmas from coming. But how? And then the Grinch got an idea. An awful idea. The Grinch got a wonderful, awful idea. I know just what to do, the Grinch laughed in his throat. And he made a quick Santa Claus hat and coat. And he chuckled and clucked, what a great Grinchy trick with this coat and this hat. Oh, just like St. Nick. All I need is a reindeer, the Grinch looked around, but since reindeer were scarce, there were none to be found. But did that stop the old Grinch? No! The Grinch simply said, can't find a reindeer, I'll make one instead. So he called his dog Max, and then he took some red thread and he tied a big red horn on Max's head. Then he loaded some bags on some old empty sacks on a ramshackle sleigh, and he hitched up old Max. And then the Grinch said, giddy up! And the sleigh started down towards the homes where the Whos lay a snooze in their town. All their windows were dark, quiet snow filled the air. All the Whos were dreaming sweet dreams without care. When he came to the first house in the square, this stop is number 1, said the old Grinchy Claus hissed. And he climbed up the roof, empty bags in his fist. Then he slid down the chimney, rather a pinch. But if Santa Claus could do it, then so could the Grinch. He got stuck only once for a moment or two. Then he stuck his head out at the fireplace flue, where the little Who stockings all hung in a row. These stockings, he grinned, will be the first to go. Then he slithered and slunk a smile most unpleasant around the whole room, and he took every present. Pop guns and bicycles, roller skates, drums, checkerboards, tricycles, popcorn, and plums. He cleaned out, he stuffed them in bags, and the Grinch very nimbly stuffed all the bags one by one up the chimney. Then he slunk to the icebox. He took the Who's feast. He took the Who pudding. He took the roast beast. He cleaned out that icebox as quick as a flash. Why, that Grinch even took the last can of Who hash. Then he stuffed all the food up the chimney with glee. And now, said the Grinch, I'll stuff up the tree. And the Grinch grabbed the tree and he started to shove. When he heard a sound like the coo of a dove, he turned around fast and he saw a small Who, Cindy Lou Who, who was not more than 2. The Grinch had been caught by this little daughter who had gotten out of bed for a cold cup of water. She stared at the Grinch and said, Claus, why? Why are you taking our Christmas tree? Why? But you know, that old Grinch was so smart and so slick, he thought of a lie. He thought it up quick. Why, my sweet little tot? The fake Santa Claus lied. There's a light on this tree that won't light on one side. So I'm taking it home to my workshop, you see. I'll fix it up there, and I'll bring it back here. And his fib fooled the little child. Then he patted her on the head, he got her a cold drink, and he sent her to bed. And when Cindy Lou Who went to bed with her cup, he went to the chimney and stuffed the tree up. Then the last thing he took was the log from the fire. He went up the chimney himself, the old liar. On the walls he left nothing but hooks and some wire. And the one speck of food he left in the house was a crumb even too small for a mouse. Then he did the same thing to the other whose houses, leaving crumbs much too small for the other whose mouses. It was 15:15 dawn, all the who's still abed, all the who's still a snooze when he packed up his sled. Packed it up with their presents, the ribbons, the wrappings, the tags, the tinsels, the trimmings, the trappings. 3,000 feet up the side of Mount Crumpet, he rose to the tip-top to dump it. Pooh-pooh to the whoos, he grinchishly humming. They're finding out now that Christmas is not coming. They're just waking up, I know just what they'll do. Their mouths will hang open for a minute or two. All the whoos in Whoville will all start to cry, boo-hoo. That's a noise, grinned the Grinch, that I simply must hear. So he paused, and the Grinch put a hand to his ear. And he did hear a sound rising over the snow. It started in low, and then it started to grow. But the sound wasn't sad. Why, the sound sounded merry. It couldn't be so. But it was merry. Very. He stared down at Whoville. The Grinch popped his eyes, then he shook. What he saw was a shocking surprise. Every who down in Whoville, the tall and small, was singing without any presents at all. He hadn't stopped Christmas from coming. It came. Somehow or other, it came just the same. And the Grinch, with his Grinch feet ice cold in the snow, stood puzzling and puzzling. How could it be so? It came without packages, boxes, or bags. It came without ribbons. It came without tags. And he puzzled 3 hours till his puzzler was sore. And then the Grinch thought of something he hadn't before. Maybe Christmas, he thought, doesn't come from a store. Maybe it means just a little bit more. And what happened then? Well, in Whoville, they say, the Grinch's small heart grew 3 sizes that day. And the minute his heart didn't feel quite so tight, he whizzed his load down